Welcome back to Arise Exchange. It has been a busy and volatile week for world markets, including our own. As we have reported for several days now, global markets have been selling off on top of a long slide for emerging markets. What's behind all of this and where might we be heading? Jonathan Satofsky from Satofsky Asset Management is back here at Arise to discuss this with us, and thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just start with Japan. What exactly is going on there, and is this something that could be contagious to us here?
Well, I think that there is central banks in both Japan and America and the European Union are trying to find the right mixture and the right formula of easy money versus tightening, and it's an experiment that creates a very quick liquid flow of capital that moves very fast in today's market. So there's an unintended consequence. So when either Federal Reserve chairmen speak and throw out the idea that they may pull back some stimulus, immediately you get a reaction, both in the bond market and the commodities market and the gold market and the Japanese market, and they say, wait, okay, we floated that out there. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Maybe we shouldn't go down that path.
But is there any surprise here? I mean, the flow of liquidity, the pumping, in essence, the pumping of dollars into the economy here had to stop at some point and will stop at some point or be cut back. So why such a surprise?
Well, at the end of the day, it's a question of why are they cutting back? Are they cutting back because it's too loose and too easy, or are they cutting back because conditions really on the ground level across the globe are actually improving? And there's a lot of mixed signals. I was in a CEO conference yesterday with people in a whole host of different industries, from fashion to manufacturing to advertising to data, warehousing and recruiting. And across the board, every single one of the businesses have had very nice improvements this year. So even though they are expressing anxiety about their next decision tree, across the board they're saying, yeah, things are better.
Things are better. Well, you and I have sort of talked about this disconnect between the markets and the economy. Is that disconnect in part because of the inflow of liquidity into the markets?
Well, at the end of the day, the idea of loose money or banks having the ability to extend credit is for a consumer or a business to be able to have access to buy a car. Just using the example in Brazil or in a third world country where someone is able to go buy a car on credit, and that car enables them to commute. And that commuting gets them a job, and that job enables them to have money to be able to buy a home, and then they get credit to buy a home. And then after establishing credit for a period of time, they're able to refinance and get a longer mortgage, similar to what's happened in the United States. Lower rates have enabled people to refinance. Generally, most consumers aren't terribly disciplined. When they have that excess money,
they spend it.
They spend it.
And we like that, though, right? This is a consumer-driven economy. We want people to spend somewhat recklessly.
As you saw today, we had very good consumer spending report where consumer spending had increased. And that filters back through the economy. And that virtuous cycle can be very healthy for a self-sustaining recovery.
But at some point, it becomes a little bit of a problem, basically.
You don't want it to get out of hand, because at the end of the day, people do need to find the right balance between saving and spending.
And so the Feds, the central banks have to find that right balance too. And is this part of the issue, is that we've turned too much to maybe central planning here, though you could argue is very necessary?
It's a complicated question. We're in a very experimental time where the magnitude and the volume of this money printing, the Fed's balance sheet has increased close to annualized rate of about 45% a year this year. So it's we don't fully know what the impact is going to be if they pulled the trigger back too quickly. I think that in their mind, they're thinking of, well, if we go too far in the other direction and we tighten things too quickly, we can very quickly cause this exodus where people pull back, stop spending,
And we've sort of seen that from the Fed because the communications have been a little bit more murky than even normal. We saw the Fed chair testify, and then a few hours later they said that maybe in June, and then they pulled back a little bit. Well, it's just that's created a bunch of volatility.
It's a level of uncertainty. Businesses like to make decisions with certainty. Even a saver, I got a call yesterday of someone who's been a very diligent saver her whole life, in her 60s and 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And she's been used to investing in CDs her whole life, and she has money that we've had invested over the years. And she says, I'm no longer earning anything on my CDs. There's no incentive to save the money.
There's no reason, and that's why equities go up.
So what happens is there is really very few alternatives. So in a capitalistic society, people want to make money. So you could get, a path that people least expect is a path where equity markets continue to do exceptionally well around the world.
So let me ask you, what's going to happen when the Fed starts tapering off? Is this starting to be baked into the market, or is it possible that a large part of these gains, some 15% this year or so that we've seen, was built almost entirely on this liquidity that came in?
It's partially the liquidity. It's also partially the issue in the investment community and the financial planning community. When you sit down with a client and you say, okay, we need to map out what your risk tolerance is, how much exposure do you want to stocks to sleep at night? And generally speaking, because of the crisis of 2000 to 2002 and the crisis of 2008, the vast majority of the population has contracted their risk appetites because they are terribly scarred by that occurrence. So they're a little reticent to go too far out on the extreme and be 100% invested in the equity markets again. However, if you get a scenario where the markets don't have a 15% year, but a 30 or 40% year, and they go up very fast in the year ahead.
Or 80%, like in Japan.
Or a very fast move, a 50% rise in Japan, then what happens is money flows follow the action. So people look at their statements and they say, wait a second, I'm not making money in all of these other diversified areas. I'm only making money in stocks. Sell everything else, put it all in the stocks.
And that's when things turn.
But no one's really asking for that. So that degree of caution in historical context makes me believe that we're in a environment where risk-taking is likely to continue to get rewarded in a very healthy manner.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jonathan Satovsky, thank you. You are watching Arise Exchange.